Hey guys, so those of you who are regular listeners will know that we missed last week's stats chat, which I'm sure you're aware is generally my chance to kind of talk or rant about things that are going on in A Song of Ice and Fire that week. I did actually make a video, but Mickey has been away; he's been unable to edit it, and it was mostly about Gencon and some things like that, which I can kind of wrap up today. And my thoughts on have slightly changed since the Asia Expo, so we might as well just leave that one, park it, and we'll do a whole new video with 2 weeks worth of things for me to rant about, because well, there's always stuff that kind of gets on my mind, and why not just let you know? So let's start with the Gen Con spoilers, right? So there was a 1 hour session, Fabio, Michael, and Helena. And they spoiled some things. They showed a lot of renders. They showed some nice images. I would say at the time, my general response to the whole thing, though, was like, eh? Like, is that it? So I think that was kind of mirrored in a lot of the community in general. There was not very much discussion about the spoilers. There still isn't now, really. Like, not a lot of people are talking about it, which shows that your spoilers haven't really hit the mark. There were lots of renders, so let's talk about what I liked. So the attachment boxes, lots of the models, lots of the scopes look good. So that's nice. I was super pleased to find out that there is 2 of every infantry in the box, or at least we think so from the pictures. The pictures seem to represent what you get. 2 of each infantry. That's brilliant. I didn't expect that necessarily. The scopes look a little bit hit and miss. Like, a lot I really like. Some not so sold on. But you can't like every single model. There are some kind of hints in there. We're talking about a Tyrell Pikeman and also a Thorn Guard for Baratheons, for example, which kind of hint towards a unit that might be coming out in the future. But in general, that's all stuff that we basically knew existed and was coming out and had already all been told. So to see the scopes is good. We didn't see any rules, but I mean, like, I know people always want rules and stuff, but I don't care for them that much. What I want them to tell me what date it's coming out. And they didn't at all. They make no indication, no light promises, strong promises, no dates at all. They don't even say a quarter. They don't even say a year. And that's what really disappoints me about the spoilers and the whole thing in general. Is that I think that people aren't talking about it that much, and people are desperate for the rules. Like I say, I'm not super desperate for them to spoil the cards and show me the rules. People are desperate for the rules, not because they really desperately want to play them on TTS, want to play them right now, want to play them whenever. They want the rules because they have no idea when they're going to really get the models. Even if you gave a release date, people generally kind of aren't sure whether or not the models are going to arrive in their local area, in their country, whether or not even if they pre-order them on the first date, whether or not they're going to turn up on their doorstep. So that's why people want rules, because they know that for the next 6 months, 1 year, they're going to have to proxy these things. And, that's the painful reality of it. And that's why people are desperate for rules. So attachment boxes, I did like. I was quite pleased to find out what you get in them in general, and I was pretty pleased with the scopes. The mammoths and the mother of dragons, like, they were supposed to be like these big reveals, but they've been like, they do what they say on the box, right? The mother of dragons, nobody had any kind of thoughts that it wasn't going to be Dany with 3 dragons, like, or at least I didn't. I was convinced that that's what it would be. And the mother of dragons and mammoths, I was quite pleased to find out that you get 2 in the box, just like a war machine. But, that's about the extent of what I care about. Because those 2 boxes have been on a pre-order list, like at basically a local store of mine, for over 6 months. I've known they're coming. I know they exist. You, again, won't tell me when they're coming out. So I've gained no new information except seeing a pretty render. What's the value in a pretty render? I mean, like, if I was just wanting to look at some pretty pictures, I'd just go play a computer game. You know what I mean? Like, I want models that I can own in my hand. And until you start to give me some kind of guarantees that I can buy this model on this date and it will come out in the next 6 months, then it's just a picture. Like, I could go and look at some artwork of anything I wanted. So that's why the first week I was like, oh, I really don't have anything good to say, particularly about these, except for, yeah, your renders look nice, but like nearly all of their recent models have looked nice if you can physically get hold of them, if you can get your hands on them. We come to the Greyjoys. The Greyjoys I was super scared about on the first Gen Con because they showed. It was obviously, the whole thing was known to be a half of a reveal, which was going to combine with the next weekend's CMON Asia Expo. So, you know, at the time though, I was super scared because they showed what was in the base box, but they didn't show anything else. And they had said that they would be releasing another unit and Heroes 1 at the same time as the base box. That this is their new way of doing it. And because they didn't show them at all, I was very scared that Greyjoys were still a long way away from being released. So fast forward 1 week, we go to the Asia Expo and they show us the other unit and they show us Heroes 1. They show us every model, they show us the names, and that is a big step forward for me. They showed some rules, they showed some sides of cards. That was also good. It shows that they're a little bit further forward. But like I say, that they're all shown now says that Greyjoys aren't necessarily miles away from being released. Again, I have no idea when it actually is, though. They won't commit to a date. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, you know, like. And I know there's COVID, the big thing carrying all over this, the big excuse, but this is still the same thing that used to happen before COVID, which is nobody knew when anything was going to get released. Even like your store down the road doesn't know when it's going to get stuff in. And that's just not a way to be able to, I pre-order everything as soon as it comes up, and I have no idea when it's going to get released. And I just have to have patience and hope that it will turn up. And I have to phone my local store and say, by the way, do you know that this was released last week? Do you have it? Can you tell me when you're going to get it in? I pre-ordered it with you 6 months ago. And they're like, oh, well, we haven't heard anything. And I'm like, you know, like, that's just not a good state of affairs. That's not good communications. That's not good stocking. And it all ties back into this idea that they won't release a date that it's getting released because they won't commit to anything. So, you know, let's park that bit. What else happened in the Asia Expo? I was a lot more interested in what happened at the Asia Expo reveal spoilers than I was what happened at the Gen Con. We saw the rest of the Greyjoys. We saw the Free Folk attachment box. Funnily enough, people after the first one, after Gen Con, were thinking maybe they're holding back on the Free Folk one because it's got some massive reveal of some really great thing in, because Free Folk don't have any cavalry, and every other attachment box has a cavalry attachment in it. So maybe if they had a cavalry attachment, it would reveal that the Free Folk are getting cavalry, or maybe it's got like a character giant or an attachment giant or some, you know, crazy thing. Like people were like, oh, this could be holding back because it's great. No, they held it back because it's the worst by a long way. It has only infantry attachments in, and only one of them is new. Okay, so the Walrus clan leader, basically you're buying it for that box right now. I think the intention is that even the new attachments all come inside of boxes that are to be released in the future, so they do like indicate that other boxes are coming which will have these things in. But I mean, that's a real disappointment for Free Folk, because not only is it like none of them are particularly cool, like they are all non-issues when it comes to playing competitively. And by competitively, I just mean like a decent list. Good lists don't include the raid leader. They don't include the Spearwife matriarch. Very few include any kind of I forget even what they're called. Cave Dweller Alpha. There must be more. What's the Followers of Bones or Champion of Bone? Like, and there's Then attachment ones. Chosen of Styre. There we go. Like, between those last three, you might see one now and again. Um, they used to have a tiny bit of use because they were a point and maybe you had a point left, and so, but I mean, like, free folk have a lot of good uses for a point, and now that skin changes are out, skin changes and a few named attachments are the only things that exist in competitive lists. These units don't see use. They're nice sculpts, they are good alternatives, and free folk can spam stuff, but it's not gonna get used significantly. So at the moment, it's waste. They need tweaking. Something needs tweaking. I mean, they can't be made any cheaper. They're all only 1 point, and the free folk are already a very powerful faction. So that's a totally different thing. We see the rest of the Greyjoys. Greyjoys could be coming out. The thing that really got me was the R'hllor Lightbringers. They showed the rules, brilliant, but more like they showed a unit which I wasn't 100% sure what it was, and now I've seen it, and now I am, and now I'm super happy. Even more so, I didn't know what the King's Men were going to be, and now that I've seen them, I'm really, really happy about them. I like the sculpts and stuff like that. I know some people are talking about like the swords being a little bit weird or whatever, but nah, I love them. And they're like the only thing which I saw renders of, and I was like, yes, I have learned something here. I have gained some information, which is I didn't know what the King's Men were going to be. They could have been like another kind of like attachment box. They could have been anything, but they are heavily armored two-handed swordsmen. Like, that's new information. And so even without a card, I don't need a card to be pleased with them. I need some information. They still don't say when they're coming out. They're still attached to one of my pre-orders somewhere. Now that I know what they are, I think I'm going to go and pre-order a second unit. Now that I know that they're not like named attachments or something, then I'm probably going to go and order some more. They're actually currently holding back a load of other stuff that I have on order. So, I mean, this is the problem. I pre-order things and I take a guess, like a literal guess, at when I think they might come out at the same time. And I just hope that they do. Otherwise, I basically have to keep phoning up the local distributor and saying, can you change my orders around so that you deliver them all to me at the same time and stuff like that. And it's just like, just put a release date on it and I'll know when to... just give me a date. Just give me a date. That's all I want. Anyway, so that's like what the spoilers were. And again, it's been 3-4 days since their last set of spoilers. People talked about the Lightbringers a bit because they got the rules. Some people already jumping to conclusions saying they're super, super, super powerful and oh my god, Slice is broken now. But like, whatever. That's not a thing. What are people talking about it? Not really. Like, and that's the sign of the fact that your spoilers didn't quite hit the mark. Like, neutrals, nothing there. Nobody's talking about neutrals, of course. What else have we got? Lots of different... Oh, Night's Watch. Their box was mediocre, and still people are like, where is Night's Watch Heroes Box 2? Like, it was spoiled over a year ago. We saw sculpts. So this is the thing. You have previous track record of showing sculpts. They were actually finished, completed models, pictures of, rather than just renders. And still a year later, you're not even talking about them anymore. Never mind releasing them. So when you show us renders, how do we know that it will come out in the next year? And if we don't know that, how are we supposed to be interested in it? But we'll park the spoilers. I just think that they could do so much more to generate hype around the game if they were willing to commit. What else happened? The weekend of Gen Con. I'll word this like precisely. The weekend of Gen Con, another tournament was run in a location in Indy that called itself Laughter is the Poison to Fear, or something like that. Laughter is poison to fear. It's a quote by Caitlin. It was run by Family Time Games, somewhat organized by Brett. It is now post-tournament, effectively, maybe like a few days before the tournament. It is now basically being called Gencon. Like, there's battle reports going up, and it's like, this is from Gencon. Like, this was the final table of Gencon, and stuff like this. In exactly the same way as last year, there was a tournament which was run, and 1 week-ish before the tournament, it was announced, by the way, this is US Nationals. That's not Gen Con. That's not US Nationals. If you don't announce a tournament months in advance and say, by the way, this is Gen Con, then you can't post say, oh, by the way, that was Gen Con last week. What it was a 22-player event that, as far as A Song of Ice and Fire stats can measure, as far as we can measure, it had a below average quality of player. Now, Brett says, oh, there's a ton of new players who've not recorded their results through A Song of Ice and Fire stats yet, so they're all average players. But they're really, really good players, right? Well, okay, great. So you say they're good players, but there is no evidence of that. I've also, I've just today watched the final game between Brett and Chris Sellers, possibly. Might be getting the name wrong. This might be somebody else. And Brett plays well. There is nothing to take away from Brett as the champion of that event, but it's very, very clear that Brett is significantly playing better than his opponent. His opponent is making significant mistakes, plays, in my opinion, significantly badly. There is no evidence in that game that he is a good player, and that's who Brett has to beat to win the tournament. Now, I'm not saying that he's played against a bad player. If you took the worst games that I've played and asked me to analyze the play, I would say that's a bad player. These are bad plays. We all make mistakes, but his opponent does not play well. Brett does not have to do anything significant to win that game. His Stark opponent just throws away his Direwolves like on the first turn, and there, as far in every way that we can measure, every way that we do record on A Song of Ice and Fire stats, this is what we try and do. We try and give a metric for how good players are and how good a tournament is and how strong an event it is. It all comes in below par. The players who do have records on TTS, and it doesn't even use their TTS records, it uses their tabletop records, are separate to their TTS records. Of the players who did enter the event and have previous form in TTS events, they generally perform below average and are not good on the international events that we've run in TTS. And then they come into this event and they do better. So that's more like just evidence that the standard is below par. Brett is a good player. Brett is a very good player. He has good record like against other international players. He's done well in big events. He repeatedly does well and has good. You can see from his analysis of the game, the articles that he writes. He's a big part of the community and he is a good player. But to say that him winning this 22-player event has any significance is not true. And to call it Gen Con is to spit in the face of other events which have a good reputation. Or like to it sullies the reputation of Gen Con in the future and the past. It makes if that's Gen Con, then I think less of him for winning 2019 Gen Con. That's the way I would put it. Because I assume that it was much higher standard in 2019, and if it wasn't, then, well... Also, I took quite a bit of issue with the fact that it's being, reported as, oh my god, Gen Con blew the meta out the water, look, Lannisters won, well, okay, the Mountain That Rides was fielded. In other events where Mountain That Rides is fielded, he always wins. If you allow Mountain That Rides, he wins the event. It's almost 100%. And then it was oh, look, Brendan did well. And it's well, yes, Brendan has a low rating, but if you look at the game modes that he was fielded in, he's always done well in those game modes. Oh, direwolves like are they're overrated. Like they're not that brilliant. Okay, the person who was playing in the final, he played 3 direwolves, so he got there having fielding the most direwolves as anybody. In the top half of the Starks finishers, they all had them in their list. They all used Rickon or Bran, so that's not proof that they're not the most powerful thing that Starks have. This isn't me or a Song of Ice and Fire stats or anything saying direwolves are broken, nerf direwolves. We never ask for those things. We never call for balance changes. We just point out trends and try and make people informed about what good list building mechanics are, what's strong, what you need to think about when you're playing the game, what you should be trying to counter and stuff like that. It's for players to make choices about whether or not they think something's too strong, but we are never on the side of this must be changed. Actually, what we do is we look at how powerful things are and then say, if you use that is known to be powerful, and we are going to hinder you. We are going to make your rating worse because you used it, right? So if you use the same thing that everybody else already wins with, then you're expected to win. And more importantly, if you use the factions and the things that people aren't using, if you play as Targaryens because they have a bad record, the site's like, that's brilliant, you must be a really, really good player if you can win with that faction. So the thing that the site does is it doesn't promote the same lists. It doesn't promote nerfs and balance changes. Actually, what it says is the game will never ever be perfectly balanced. So what we will do is we will measure how out of balance it is, and we will reward you or hinder you for playing against the balance. That's just another total misconception people have about the site. But that is what it is. And again, it tries to say, it's not so important that you win the event. What matters is that you did better with a faction than you were supposed to. Coming second with Targaryens is a massive achievement, whereas winning with Starks is well, all right, everybody's won with Starks. So, we come whole back around. The Mountain That Rides and other Kickstarter exclusives, but Kickstarter exclusives basically means the Mountain That Rides, because almost nobody uses Brynden Blackfish, nobody in their right mind uses Maeve Mormont, and nobody uses Maeve Jaime. So, that's your Kickstarter exclusives right there. And the Mountain That Rides is the only one that sees any real use. And when you include him, everybody uses him. So, it's are you including Mountain That Rides or not? He was included in what is now being called Gencon. This is the ramifications of post calling an event Gencon. Suddenly we get a ton of questions on the Facebook. To be honest, Kickstarter exclusives, the Mountain That Rides, has always been legal if a tournament organizer allows it. So the question is sort of mute, but it leads to a ton of questions of people saying, is the Mountain Rides legal now? Because people are oh, he was running this official Gencon event, therefore he must be legal now. Well, the tournament organizer of this event, which had very little input from CMON, decided to use it. To call it Gencon now makes people think that it has some official place in the meta, or in the tournament structure, in the competitive scene, more than its value as a 22-player local event. And that's my issue, and that's why Song of Ice and Fire Stats exists at all, which is that CMON seem unable to run their own competitive structure. A Song of Ice and Fire Stats was built to fill that void, that hole. They announced almost 9 months ago now that they were going to do competitive play, but they haven't acted on it. They say it's delayed because of COVID. But A Song of Ice and Fire Stats started before their announcement that they were going to do any competitive play, and the problem was that there is no competitive structure. Anybody can run an event and nobody has any idea whether or not it's following the proper rule structure or anything, and it's basically just if you know people at CMON, then they will give you some support. If you don't, then you're just running an event by yourself, even though it could be a massive event and much bigger. I've been to some really big events in the UK with really good players at them, which have no support, no help, because CMON don't give a crap about these stores, these people, these communities, because they don't have direct contact with somebody at them. And that's just unfortunate, like that's what it is. That this event is Gen Con is purely by the fact that Family Time Games, Brett, people at that event know people at CMON and have got them to agree that it could be the replacement to Gen Con. That doesn't make it anything different in the event, except that there were some prizes that otherwise weren't available. I'll stop talking about that because, it was still, I'll end with, it was a brilliant event. It is brilliant that they managed to get 22 people to an event at this time. It's a great start to going back to tabletop. I'm really glad it was run through the site. It is a great start because the site is designed for being used at tabletop events, not designed to be used on TTS. It's just become popular during a period when TTS was the only option. So I really hope that more tournaments will run through the site and it will be able to give actual validation to how good a tournament is. By all measurable metrics, this one was not a significant event though. Please don't assign massive significance to these results. It was Brett, a well-known good player, beating a ton of people who otherwise don't have ratings. We have no quality control on whether or not they're good players. I'm sure I could drum up 20 people in the local area and beat them. It wouldn't make me UK champion. And he did it with the Mountain That Rides, which, I'm putting together a little bit of stats on the use of him versus not use of him in tournaments, and it's night and day. Like, you include him, he wins the tournament. You don't include him, Lannisters are crap. It's basically as simple as that. This brings us around to one last thing, which is then there was a post about what else was on my mind was that there was a post about Guild Ball and the death of Guild Ball. There has been a ton of discussion about it. Some people obviously play both, have played both, know about Guild Ball, don't know about Guild Ball. A lot of people have argued against what was said in the article, that there is any blame on the competitive scene is basically them deflecting from the fact that the company was badly run and hadn't really, been providing any... they hadn't been providing product to players, which is actually the scary thing, because that's what CMON are also sort of doing in a way. They're not providing product to stores, to distributors, and they're not supporting stores and distributors with any way of running a competitive scene. But anyway, what was blamed was that if this over-reliance on competitive play, this idea that everything asks, like, as soon as something's released, it already is overpowered or underpowered or whatever, is the reason why Guild Ball can't exist anymore, why it's had to kind of close its doors, why they're not even releasing the last few things that they've designed. And that is a very interesting discussion. And I think that people should be aware that that when they call for things and say, this is overpowered, this has to change, that is not the right attitude. People should be aware and people should acknowledge when things aren't balanced. You would hope that they are working to balance things. I definitely personally hope that they're working on a change to the way that direwolves function, because I believe that the triple direwolf, or at least double direwolf lists, the 10 activation Stark lists at 40 points, dominate the way the game is played. That doesn't mean that they can't lose. That doesn't mean that they're overpowered necessarily. What they are is they dominate the way every other faction builds its lists. Every other faction is trying to get its activation count as high as possible, because that is the most important thing. If anything, what I actually hope is they're considering the whole way that activations work, or activation advantage works, because that is the most significant strength in the game right now, in my opinion. It's why free folk are so strong. It's why direwolves and high activation spam Starks do so well in tournaments. And I think that it dominates the way the game is played. That doesn't mean that I'm saying direwolves are overpowered. You like, oh, I won't play you if you play direwolves. Like, no, they are a thing that I have to account for when I build my list. Whenever I'm building, I'm thinking about how I will counter them, what I can do to minimize their effect on the game and stuff like that. So when you instantly see Relore Lightbringers and start saying they're too powerful, that's a problem, because you haven't even tested them. You haven't just found out if they're any good. You're just looking at things purely on paper. And more to the point, a Song of Ice and Fire stats is not trying to call for nerfs or buffs to units. Like, that's not what we do. What we do is we help players be more informed about the game. Now, here's the problem. The more informed you are, the more quickly the more international we are as well. That's the other problem, is that we move to this phase where like there are lots of international TTS games. In the past, it was always like, oh, the US do this thing, and like it was arguable that that was good, and the Europe were like, oh, we play 3 NCUs all the time. Like, where, like, that's just like, how could you ever play 2 NCUs? And lots of vocal people in the US were like, well, we play 2 NCUs and it's fine. We play more combat units better. You've also got some of the big names from Australia and stuff like that saying we play 2 NCUs, it's better, stuff like that. And what you get is you get an international TTS event, and suddenly we produce actual statistics of what did better and what did worse, and it's not up for debate anymore. Like, that's not debatable. Like, you can look at the results and you can make your own decisions about what's better or worse. We have accelerated the rate at which you can learn and understand about the game, and you are no longer restricted to just being able to see information from your own local group. I bet every local group out there has, at some point, players have said, this is overpowered, this is too good. Like, oh, Night's Watch veterans are just unbeatable, like, because they have a really good Night's Watch player who plays that unit very well. And nobody in their local area can figure out how to beat this player. He plays all sorts of other different things and around them, but their favorite unit is John in Night's Watch or whatever point in game. Maybe that unit's powerful, maybe it's not even powerful. The player is just very, very good. Right, he knows how to use them, or she knows how to use it, and does well with it, and therefore that's what people think is overpowered in that local group. But we have just blown that out onto an international scale now. Now you can find information about what everybody's using, what everybody's doing, and we will provide you with statistics based on how often it wins. We've accelerated the rate at which you can find information about the game, and now people are just saying, oh, like everything's broken, or like everybody's talking about the same thing being broken, because they're finding out other things that people do elsewhere in the world, trying them out for themselves, and they're like, oh my god, I never realized how powerful this was. Before the NRG TTS League, I genuinely did not understand how powerful a 10 activation Stark Direwolf spam list was, because I had never seen a player play it well in the whole country. In the entirety of the UK, I had never been to an event, and I've been to quite a few up and down the country, and I had never seen somebody turn up with a triple Direwolf list and take me apart with it. Now I've played on TTS against other very, very good players who do that. I'm now like, I see the power of that, and my knowledge of the game has improved. My understanding of what's powerful and what's not has improved. I now, as a person, can choose to say, I think direwolves are overpowered, they need a nerf. Or I can say, I need to be more informed about how I'm going to beat them. I need to practice against that list more. I'm of the second opinion. I just need to practice more against them. There are ways to beat them. They lose plenty. In my local area, like, as one of the best players who played in my local group, almost everything that I ever played got called overpowered. It's not. It's been proved in international tournaments that it's not that good. There are better things out there. My opponents just didn't know what those better things were, so they just always called the things that win overpowered. People will always call whatever wins, whatever they see win, And before, they only saw their local group, and now they see on an international level. And that accelerates the rate at which people call for nerfs. And that's the thing. Like, that's an unexpected consequence of the way the site works. It was supposed to inform players. It was not supposed to dictate the game in any way. But that's the way people use it, it seems. And I, again, have an issue with people. If you have an agenda to prove, you will find stats on the site that help back you up. If you want to ask for something to be nerfed, you can find results which help prove that it should be. But the reality is that everything is winnable with and everything is losable with. The game is very tactical. That's why I like it. The game is won and lost on the table. There are just things that are higher performing and things that are lower performing. And we see that repeatedly. Gencon was no different. It followed the exact same trends as every other result. I mean, not Gencon. And that's where we're at, you know, like things are balanced. Like the game is, well, you can decide. You can look at the stats and decide if you think things are well enough balanced. I don't think calling out, we point out things that aren't for your benefit. I don't think calling for things to change will improve things. The developers, they partly seem to not listen. Like, or more to the point, they're working so far in advance that, maybe they've already fixed the problem. But the problem is that they won't say that. They'll never say, oh, yeah, we acknowledge that this is a problem. We are actually fixing it. We have already fixed it. It will come out in 3 months. Because that's not the way CMON work. They don't tell us when things are happening. They don't discuss with the community. The real problem is they've stopped answering rules questions on the forum. That's also the bad thing for me. Because Baratheons and some cards like Barristan Tell Me and stuff like that, they've thrown up some, like, there is a huge amount of debate because the rule wordings are a little bit loose. Nobody really understands what targeted means when you're targeted by a rule. It's not defined. So there are a ton of ambiguous rules that the community are having to come up with answers for by themselves. And the only thing they seem to do is talk to single people that they know in the community and give a ruling to them. But that's not how rules work. If it's not written that way, that's not how the community will play it. And if you won't come out and write down in words on your forum, in an FAQ, in a rules errata, in anything, if you won't update the rules, then hearsay, word of mouth, is not going to change my mind. Somebody saying, oh, I spoke to somebody at CMON, and he said, fainting maneuver doesn't work like that. I'm like, great, show me in the rules. Nope. Okay, then you saying you know somebody doesn't change my mind. There we go. So, that's where we're at. It's been 2 weeks since the last video. There have been some good things. You know, there are some good things from the spoilers. And there was a great event run. Like I say, I rant a lot. And I generally I'm not always the most positive about the game, but I play it a ton. And I buy everything that comes out for it. Like, I do love this game, don't get me wrong, but I fear sometimes for its future. I fear for the way that they treat the community, and that came across a lot in the spoilers, in the expo and stuff like that. I think that they are more used to dealing with a board game community where you release a board game and it's pretty much done. It's done. You don't have to interact with it. You don't really have to do whatever. Like, the people will answer their own questions. But a competitive war game is a whole different beast, and something that I'm not always sure that CMON are on top of. Anyway, great place to finish, right? So, what we're going to do. You should check out the Tourney ground, which is always more positive than this stats chat ranting and reviewing. There'll be another Commander Spotlight out soon, where we talk about some really fun things. So watch them, and what else? Make sure that you submit all of your results, not just your tournament results. I'm organizing at the moment. I'm looking to put together a tournament for the top-rated TTS players because, like I say, what matters way more than how big an event is, how many players turned up, is knowing that these are really high-quality players. So putting together all the best TTS players and sticking them in an event together, because that's kind of what the site is all about. Really get them to throw down and see if we can kind of announce ourselves and a Song of Ice and Fire stats champion. You know what I mean? Like, I would basically consider, the person who wins that tournament, I consider to be the best player in the world. You may or may not, agree, but if you think that you're better than these players, you have no evidence, as far as I'm concerned, to say that you are. And these guys do have a ton of evidence which says that they are better than you. Hey, there we go. And so watch out for that. And also, I'm sure you've seen about the 3 sales Super League and stuff like that. There's tons of content for that. So stick around for that stuff. Check out all the other videos, like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Because a ton of work goes into a Song of Ice and Fire stats, and all I want from you is for you to submit your results inside and outside of tournaments. So go and do that. Use the site and check out the builder. And I'll see you next week.